holy hush around us. I see glory in its face. Surely the presence of joy is in this place. Surely the presence of peace is in this place. I can feel its loving power and its grace. There's a holy truth within us that no error can replace. Surely the presence of peace is in this place. Surely the presence of love is in this place. I can feel its tender power and its grace. There's a holy glow within us that nothing can erase. Surely the presence of love is in this place.
We just sang about this place and feeling the presence sitting here. And when you do sit here in this very special place, there is a presence that we feel. A very unique, beautiful, peaceful presence. But you can have that feeling, you can be aware of that presence anytime you choose, if you train your mind to be aware that presence of the divine is infinite and it's everywhere, forever. And it's up to us to train our minds, to control our awareness to where we can experience the presence that's everywhere and within. And so it is.
I've been thinking a lot about grief lately. We are here at the end of the month period, the 4-month period for me of the year that for me is dark blue and full of sadness. The confusing part for me, though, is that it has also been full of moments of wondrous joy. Baby Forden, my youngest grandson, has the most beautiful smile. Booker, my first grandson, gets so excited when he's telling me something that he just jumps up and down in place. The best part of it is I understand almost all of what he says. As I said, it is confusing to me to have so much joy in my life and yet be overwhelmed with grief. I read recently that grief is like a rogue ocean wave. It comes out of nowhere and overwhelms you with emotion. And then it's calm again. It is in that moment of calmness that healing begins. Most of us here are of an age that we have lost someone, or many someones, perhaps a beloved dog, or a cat, or a parrot. And it doesn't have to be death. Perhaps it is just change. 28 years ago, my mom died. A month and a half later, my dad died. Now, granted, he had esophageal cancer, which is nearly always fatal. But that is not what killed him. My dad died of a broken heart. In another month, they would have been married 54 years. So yes, grief can kill you if you let it. It leaves a hole that can never be filled. But I promise you that while there will always be a hole, I promise you it will get easier to bear.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, good morning, everyone. I apologize. I'm a little disheveled this morning. PG&E shut our gas off to the hall sometime this weekend, and it was very cold for our board meeting this morning, and I got a little testy, I think. And yes. So anyway, welcome to everyone. To this morning we had our first board meeting with our brand new board, and our new board moderator is none other than David Christopher, who is out with PG&E right now, getting the gas turned back on. So we started right away. So Thursday should be this coming Thursday, the spiritual book study meeting. I think it's this Thursday at 10 o'clock in the hall. The 25th will, oh, wait a minute. Yes, the 25th will be our cabaret. The Bluebirds will be here from 5 to 7 p.m. The 26th will be potluck and Bonnie's Chicken and Dumplings. So, and you might get with Bonnie and see what, maybe we have a group thing, a planning session about that potluck. It's become an annual event, like for several years. So, pretty big thing.
It only happens once a year.
Yeah. Well, the chicken and dumplings, Bonnie's Chicken and Dumplings. We have potluck the last Sunday of every month, but once a year, Bonnie provides chicken and dumplings for everybody. Something else I wanted to, I don't know how many of you are aware of Music to My Ears. You remember the lady that came and sang classical music here a while back? Krista Durand. She's a mezzo-soprano. She has the music school, Music to My Ears, to give music lessons of everything for instruments and vocal and all kinds of things. Anyway, every year they have a fundraiser, and it's going to be the same day as our cabaret, so don't you dare go. It's at the Druids Hall from 4 till 8. But they do that to have people donate to provide scholarships for kids for music lessons. And I participate in that personally. A lot of school programs for low-income families provide music lessons, scholarships during the school year, but not through the summer. So these kids, to continue their school lessons through the summer, they have scholarship programs, and then some kids just need some financial help. So it's very worthwhile. And if anybody would like to participate in sponsoring or making a donation, just I'll get information, but it's Music to My Ears. You can make out a check, or I'll put you in touch with Krista. The fundraiser is the same day as our cabaret. Yeah, the 25th. Any other announcements? Yes.
Just a reminder that Healing Circle is ongoing Monday evenings now here in the sanctuary, 7 to 8 p.m.
Okay. And I put the thing on the inquiring minds. Is that all right, what I wrote?
Actually, I can see it, yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. I'm going to tell you about two more things. Today, we're having one of my favoriteest people in the whole world, Julie Miller, is going to give the message this morning as our guest speaker. And next week, we're going to have a very special surprise mystery presentation that I'm very excited about. So please be here next week if you possibly can. It's going to be well worth listening to. And I'm glad you're all here today. Anything else? All right, then let's stand up. Open my eyes that I may see. Number 72 on the Wings of Song.
Open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth that Silently now I wait for thee. Ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my ears and move in me, Spirit divine. Open my mouth and let me bear gladly the warm truth everywhere. Open my heart and let me prepare love with thy children thus to share. Silently now I wait for thee. Ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my heart to move in me, Spirit divine.
And now we have the opportunity to greet each other in the traditional Church of the Oaks fashion.
I rotate with Debbie and Wayne.
Yeah. He-
Now it's a little more.
Yeah, Debbie turned us on to Michael. They do stuff out of Jack London Square, at Jack London thing, and do fundraisers and stuff like that for him. I'll volunteer to do the admin if we can get the people to work on the advertising, recruiting members and volunteers and to foster that, reward that. It could make huge change. I'm so excited I can't hardly think straight. Oh, I almost forgot. Thank you. Well, I don't need to sing much to the choir. I just abundance and prosperity. This community is just walking, breathing, feeling example of the consciousness of abundance and prosperity. Let's read together the affirmation of abundance. May we please? True abundance and prosperity aren't based on our net worth. They're based on ourselves. May we ponder that wisdom a moment or two, Sarah. Thank you, Michael. As we prepare for our practice this morning, let's sing together, Only Believe, number 152 in the wings.
Only
Good morning, everyone. That song kind of segues into what I was seeing for today's practice, which is around experiencing our limitlessness as spirit. When you talk about unlimited possibilities or limitlessness, at an energetic level, what I really see is how much are we able to expand our energetic field? You know, we have like everything, habitual ways that we hold that. And some of it, sometimes it's, you know, kind of like closer to the back and further out in front, but narrow. Sometimes it's way down or up. So today, we're going to invite in what I call a diamond light frequency, which is to say, the divine frequency that contains all possibilities. And it's easy to visualize that today in this beautiful chapel as the light's pouring in. So take a moment to close your eyes. Just notice this beautiful, radiant, sparkling diamond light pouring into this room. In a sense, the walls of the room are disappearing, giving way to the unlimited possibilities that this light carries as it washes through the space. The brilliance of this light is like looking into a beautiful diamond. There are facets and sparkles every which way, and these represent different aspects of your awareness. So as this light filters into your energy field, your aura, as it were, let it show you where you can expand that field. Now, the difference that you notice may be subtle. It may be quite strong. When you bring your attention to these places that you didn't realize you were constricting, let this diamond light just filter through your body, your mind, your emotions, and your spiritual self. All your chakras, all of those lenses of perception that might have a certain set point that is now ready to expand. Patrick speaks often of the sacredness of awareness and understanding. The truth is that awareness and a lack of judgment is the most powerful tool we have to grow. To let the magnificence of our true selves shine through. Let this diamond light anchor now all the way down to your toes, behind you, before you, above you, below you, and all around you. Seal it in with a layer of diamond dust. The strongest protection there is. See if you can walk through the rest of your day like this. And so it is.
Thank you, Natalie and Michael. I'm very, very pleased and honored to introduce to you Julie Miller. Come talk to us.
I come up and I'm thinking of a number of images, both the one you just gave us of diamonds, but also the last time I'm not a stranger to your church, I feel like, so much anymore. I've been here a number of times, and I was part and party to the cabaret here just a couple of weeks ago, where I was feeling a lot of freedom, I guess, because I got up and danced with some older gentleman and found out later that he was very good, and he was in, I think, his 90s, and he had been a dance instructor. His wife was with him, and she was blind, and he's deaf. And yet he felt the music. Of course, they were playing blues, and it's easy to feel the blues if you've been in that audience, but I just, I'm not feeling a stranger here. I got up and danced with some 90-year-old in front of many of you and some of the people that are in your community all around you here that come to the cabarets every month, and it was a joy. It was a really wonderful event a couple weeks ago. I'm also thinking of the metaphor is I brought this piece of art, but I wasn't sure I was going to use it to talk about, but it just fits so well on your front piece here. And the metaphor that you alluded to of something dark, the dark time of this year for you is now in this time of mourning, and how much images are super important and metaphors in the way we view life. And that idea of coming out of a blue place to something brighter is somewhat of what this piece does. And this is not in my talk at all, but I'm just going to refer to it because it's powerful, and it's that time of year. We're coming out of winter and into spring. And so often I've said before that nature is a teacher to me and a model of things I see in my everyday. Nature is portraying it in such a bigger way around us. But after the Tubbs fire in 2017, I helped to organize a quilt challenge where I give parameters and a theme to a group of artists, and then they produce a work that tries to exemplify that theme. And this was one of the pieces that a friend of mine did. It's kind of like Beauty from Ashes, which I'm going to allude to today, in that the beginning of the bottom of that piece is the fire, the Tubbs fire beginning, and the warmth and the orange and the red. And then you can see that it's after the fire, the plants begin to die, and there's a time of death. And then slowly out of those ashes come new growth until the green again appears. And I hope for you in that blue place that you come to a place of new growth and greenness, that beauty from ashes. So I thought I was going to talk about something else this morning, but I kept waking up with this idea of community on my mind. And you know that when you continually get something that it's probably going to eventually coalesce into something, and it did in a form of a few stories that have come into my awareness in the last bit of time and even last week. So today I'm going to share 3 illustrations of community. And I love that Patrick just gave me, well, he told me about this at breakfast a month or so ago, that the congregation had come up with definitions of community, and then he put those into a document, and it's sitting out front. If you haven't really picked it up and read it, I would encourage you. And it's wonderful, your own ideas of community. And I think we can continue just to expand this and expand this and expand this, because our awareness of community grows over time, especially if we're in one or many. I also realize that community to me feels more precious when the world around me seems more chaotic. When there's more stress in the world around me, I cling to community more tightly and strongly, and it is precious. So today I'm going to just invite you to listen to these 3 stories and then see what your takeaways are about community from them. Maybe we can add to your repertoire of ideas. And also I want to introduce a concept when you're reading in the Hebrew or the Christian scriptures in the book of Psalms, which is King David's idea of often praising God or just talking about the human condition through many times song. And so because it'll sometimes say choir director, there's this funny little word that often is off to the side of the refrain, and it's Selah, Selah. And then you'll see more refrains, and then Selah. And I got real curious about what that word was there for and what did it mean. And they don't really know what Selah translates into, except that if you're a choir member and you're a singer, what do you occasionally have to do? Breathe. So it's a time for a breath or a pause, so that something about the refrain can linger on, or for you to actually take an inhale to continue to sing. So between these 3 stories, I just want to invite a little Selah, so that we pause and we breathe and we see what the story wants to speak to us about community. So last week, I work at a retreat center near Healdsburg called the Bishop's Ranch, and I attended part of somebody else's retreat for a morning, and the segment that I attended was called Beauty from Ashes. And it was both a talk and a guest came to speak during that time. Beauty from Ashes is a reference from the book of Isaiah, which is in the Hebrew prophets and the Christian prophets. And Isaiah is speaking in this portion of that story about a time when the captives are going to return out of captivity to freedom. All the mourning will turn to joy. There'll be a revitalization, a restoration of the people of Israel. But in that time of mourning, there's a way of mourning, a practice where you both rent your clothes and you put ashes on your body so people know you're mourning. It's a visible sign of the internal struggle. And so beauty from ashes is from mourning can come joy. So that's the idea that she was speaking of, that there are times in our lives, and how do we come out of those times of mourning into joy. She brought a speaker who is a friend of hers from Calistoga, and she's an artist, and her name is Karen Lynn Ingalls. And Karen had been occupying or renting or exchanging work for use of a studio on the Franz Valley property of a friend of hers. And it was an old chicken shed. It was beautiful, she said. It had skylights and beautiful windows and old wood and in a beautiful setting of rolling hills. And in the Tubbs fire of 2017, when it started, she was so consumed with the whereabouts of her friends and the welfare of people she knew that she completely forgot about her studio until a few days had passed. And then she wondered what had happened to her studio. when she finally got to go up and see it, it was completely gone. She describes it as being a pile of ash with some of the roofing, which was corrugated tin, folded in unusual and grotesque kind of patterns on top of this pile of ash. Nothing of what she had there seemed to remain. There was an article about her done in, I have two articles I'm going to refer to, but this is from the Napa Valley Register, and you'll hear me quote again, and it's from the Petaluma Argus-Courier, about artists during this time of fires. And so I'm going to be reading some quotes to tell part of her story. She said, "After I was finally able to get access to the barn studio, I spent parts of 3 days pulling mosaic supplies from the ashes." So she did tile work too. "They had survived, broken and usable. On the third day, I realized where my shelves with paintings had been. The ashes under the melted metal of the shelves were remnants of my paintings. That was when it really came home to me. And the next morning, I woke up depressed." So picture these metal shelves had collapsed on top of her paintings, which burned, and there were the paintings, all ash, under these shelves. Karen went into her local coffee shop, which is called the Calistoga Roastery. It's one of those classic coffee shops where the community meets, where the locals come. It's not a Starbucks. It doesn't see traffic from highways. It's where people come to visit and talk, and the local management there puts up art shows from people's works and has it rotating in the coffee shop. When she walked in there, and everyone who was there was all suffering from the aftermath of this horrible fire, the owner was talking with her and said, "Karen, would you do an art installation in the coffee shop?" I don't think he knew that all of her works had basically burned, 30 years of her works in this art studio. And she paused and she thought about it and she said, "Yes, give me 3 weeks." So then go back to the article here. "When I knew what I wanted to do, I came back 2 more days to my studio to dig up the ashes of my paintings. I've added ashes of my old paintings to acrylic mediums to create textures and used close-up photographs of the ruins as collage elements to create these new paintings." Well, Sylvan, would you walk around a little bit? I just picked 2 of them, but she actually mixed up the ashes into her paints and painted with those ashes for texture. And she told me she also took some fragments. So under those metal shells, when she lifted them up, were little color bits from paintings that had burned all but these little pieces. And she recognized, well, that's sky, and that's field, and that's greenery from some painting. And she put those into these new pieces as well. And they were displayed in this coffee shop. "I was sifting through the ashes of what had been and mourning it. The ashes of all those old paintings needed to have something beautiful made for them. It seemed timely," Ingalls said. She created enough paintings for a show in the coffee shop. What I love is that what was happening in Karen's life was also happening in other artists' lives all around us in Sonoma County. And on the anniversary of the Tubbs fire, which would be 2018, a year later, a show entitled Renewal Through Art and subtitled The Sonoma Wildfires Exhibition opened at the Petaluma Art Center. And Karen had her art in that show. It was curated by a woman named Carol, and it was really moving. I guess there were sculptures, there were metal pieces from this melted metal. People made these beautiful sculptures. There are many different media of art in that show. According to the woman, Carol, who headed up the show, the inspiration for the show came from her realization that many friends, those who'd lost their homes in the fire, along with those who were emotionally affected through witnessing the sorrow of friends and family, were responding to their loss by doing what they'd always done, creating art, to grapple with the sadness and the anger and the grief, and to put into some kind of physical form some sense of resolve to make a new life out of the ashes of the wildfires. So this curator says, art can heal, and you can renew things through art. That's why we named the show Renewal Through Art, but it's not just in creating the art that you sometimes find a little bit of healing. You can find it through experiencing the art that others have created through their own grieving and healing process. So when I sat with this story, and it just kept coming back to me, this from ashes came some kind of healing and restoration. She reframed her loss of all those paintings burned by turning the ashes from her studio into art, and shared that art with her community in a small way in a little art shop in Calistoga. But she joined so many other artists in doing that same thing, of finding in their process of healing through doing art, they shared their beauty. And those people that came to see that art show experienced hopefully some kind of a healing through seeing beauty from ashes. It was healing for the greater community. Just pause for a little Selah. This year, 2023, started out in kind of a raucous way as far as weather, right? We had the cyclone bomb sitting off the coast and pelting us with 9 different atmospheric surges, which sounds, that's what my friends were hearing back east, and I kept getting these messages, right? Like, are you guys okay in Sonoma County? Because the media was just playing this up, and for some, it was devastating. We sit near the Russian River off of Mark West Creek. So there is local flooding that just happens when we get big rains. We can see and watch the vineyards fill with water. It was the same vineyard that the Prius drove into that you might have read about in the paper, where the woman couldn't get out of her car and called 911. I drove by that car every day to work for a few days before they removed it. But we watched the waters rise up and cover up the vineyards, and then it covers up our neighbor's meadow, and then it eventually comes to our doorstep. And so we can watch the progression of the water. And we know exactly how many feet and inches above the flood mark it needs to be to actually affect us. Now you can imagine, if you live along the Russian River, would you know that measurement as well for yourself? You certainly do. And you know it for your neighbors, and you know it for your friends. And I've always been kind of mystified when I read stories of people who rebuild in places that receive regular, traumatic, especially weather or geological events, like the folks that live on an earthquake fault and they have a big quake and their house falls down and they rebuild it in the exact same spot. Or there's been a massive wildfire that sweeps through a certain area that's swept through there before, and after the fire, they build their house in the same place. And the people who periodically, and for Russian River people, it can be a couple times every decade, the waters rise, their house floods, within 24 hours it's gone and leaves behind a big mess where you replace carpeting and your drywall and your paint and your furnishings. Each time this happens, and yet they clean up. They say, oh, it's just a chance to get new carpeting and new appliances. Wow, that's that's an attitude I don't have, and I didn't understand. And I've sat with that for many decades. Why do these people keep continuously rebuilding in these places of paths of natural devastation? And then I read an article in the Press Democrat, and I set it aside because it really began to answer this query, and it has to do again with community. And so it's an illustration today. And actually the article isn't just about one woman, it's really about a trio of women. So I want to highlight the 3 aspects they, for me, define about community, and also help to answer this question of why do you stay in a place where devastation is common. And I'm going to be referring again to the Press Democrat just a little bit. So Jen Otten lives in Rio Neto, and if you've driven out River Road towards the coast, Rio Neto is just east of Guerneville. It's a very small community, about 500 people or so. And she lives up on a slope inside this little back area off the River Road busyness, and she's been there for most of her life. And when she got interviewed, it was after the second one of these major surges of 9 storms. And so this reporter came in and asked her about community and about why how she prepares and gets herself mentally ready for these storms. And she does it both mentally, but I think she does it more physically. She said, my home sits on a hillside, and I have my generator, I have all my cords laid out to all my different utilities I'm going to need. I have extra fuel, I have food, I have a propane fireplace. I'm ready, and I have my weather radio, and I listen to it all day long. Now that's very me-centric, but then she said, and I listen to it for my neighbors, and I want them to be prepared. Her heart was for her neighbors to be prepared. If you're going to stick around, people, take care of yourself and be ready for a storm like this one. Kate Guglielmino is a river lifer. She has lived in Guerneville since the age of 4. She just says there's no place to live but this river community. She gave an example that she wouldn't live anywhere else. And she said as a kid, because she's been through so many floods, I think this woman's about 60, so imagine how many floods she's been through. When the floods made the news, I'd hop on the boats ferrying reporters to the storm sites and pointing out all the local landmarks that were underwater. This is where my playground is, this is where the slide is, this is where, and she knew all the local landmarks. And now she says that when it rains, she worries. Because every waterlogged home, every mud-soaked business has a face and a name behind it. So now she knows when the river reaches 38 feet and 2 inches, that's going to affect this family. And when it reaches 39 feet, it's going to flood this road or that trailer court. She's very aware of the river. She says people who live in the river corridor know that 32 feet has a name. Kate has a routine when the big storms hit. She says we have a turkey dinner before the power goes out, and then we live off of turkey sandwiches the rest of the time. Jennifer Wirtz is a longtime Russian River resident, and she, like others, leads her answers about why people put up with so much woe from Mother Nature with one word, and that's community. There is something about living on the river that people who just love it can't quit, and it's largely because of their neighbors. Wirtz tapped into the community. She's constantly busy with assist. When this reporter reached her the first time, she was buying gift cards for river residents in needs. The second time, she was en route to help tow trailers that owners worried were at too low of an elevation. And at one point, I asked, why? Why do river dwellers do it? This is the reporter. She says, why do they stay flood after flood? Because we're crazy. The end. But she was laughing when she said it, and then she had to go. She was on the move to help another neighbor. So this woman and these 3 women demonstrate their connection and participation in their community from the first one I told you about, her sense of place. She knows her landmarks. She can take reporters there. She'll know who will be affected. To a woman who prepared well to ride out the storm and wanted her neighbors to be prepared as well. And lastly, to a woman whose deep connection to people and place let her know who was in need as the river rose inch by inch, and respond with acts of service. All different ways of responding with their time, their talent, their thought, and their treasure, their abundance to care for their neighbors. Their time, their talent, their thought, and their treasure to share their abundance with neighbors. Let's take a Selah for a moment with that. So this last story is a bit personal because it's about Sylvan and I. And we moved from Santa Rosa to Forestville about 5 years ago. And we looked for a year and a half for property and didn't find. So we had a lot of time to begin doing some values clarification. Like, what is it that we both really, really want in a place that we would call our own? We both agreed on a few things. We wanted some dark night skies with no artificial light. We wanted a bigger expanded garden, a big workshop. We wanted chickens. Well, one of us wanted chickens. And then there was this piece that, when I did my values clarification, I just had this kind of bubble out there that said missional. And I didn't know what that was. But I wanted our property to do more than just be something for us. But I didn't know what that was. So we waited on that piece. But we found a piece of property. It's just a 1 little acre right on River Road, right on that river corridor. And we waited to find out what that other piece was. And it didn't take long before my husband, who had retired, realized that he was now a facilities manager. Because when you move to the country, you get a few things. You get all the things I mentioned as values, but then you also get things like, not city water, but well water, a water quality system. We have, 5 different buildings. We have over 20 fruit trees. We have projects on a 1947 house with an addition now. And so he found that his retirement was looking a lot like a lot of projects on his list, which my husband is very good at projects, but I realized it didn't feel a lot like retirement. So we started thinking about how to ease that. And I work still, and he doesn't. So I kept looking at this building. Buildings were somehow really important to me when we were shopping for this house. And our house has a number of outlying buildings, but one of them is something that looks sort of like an old-fashioned water tower, a 2-story, cool-looking shaped building. I don't know how many square feet it is, maybe 600 square feet, top, bottom. And it was down below, it was a storage area for extra food and household things. And then there was a separate stair up the back that went up to a very purple and pink area for their daughter's playhouse. And that's all it had ever been used for. But I had ideas for that space. And eventually Sylvan and I came to think that we could build a tiny house in that tower. It's now called the Tiny House Tower. And it was a super fun project to do and to visualize and then make happen. And then we met our old neighbor from our previous location at a bar, listening to her husband play music. And I asked, she'd been off traveling, and I said, "What are you looking to do now?" And she said, "We're really looking for a place that we can rent and do work trade for part of our rent." They were 28 and 26 at the time. Young, strong, healthy, vibrant young people. One was a professional musician. The other one was studying to be a midwife and a doula and now a massage therapist. And in alignment, we knew them. I knew her especially. And I said, "You need to come over and talk." So they did. And we started listening to what they were desiring, and we started listening to what we needed. And in that moment, we realized we could maybe work something out. I'd never heard of anybody doing something like what we created. It just was very organic. We set a price in our mind of what this space would be worth to rent on the market. And then we said if we paid someone this much per hour, which is a fair wage, they could work off up to 1/3 of their rent every month if they chose to. So something that would have been over $1,000 for a rent was now closer to $600, which for Sonoma County is a bargain. Yeah, it's a hard thing to find. And it was brand new and spanky and beautiful. And so they moved in and they began to, we have a sheet where we fill out the projects and what we think it needs, and they put in their time, and we move through the list like that and talk about things. But what we found is that they had a lot of energy but not a lot of experience or knowledge. So Sylvan is an incredible handyman. He was a builder. He's been a stonemason. He knows water systems. So he began to mentor them in how to build things, simple things, from a wood shed to the stone columns that come into our driveway. They didn't know how to prune trees. They didn't know how to paint a room. They didn't know how to properly do a variety of tasks that I can do, and so I got to train them. So it was we do, you do, I watch, you do. And that's a lovely thing. And they want to have a homestead of their own, and so these skills that they're learning will be very applicable, even to how to use a weed whacker when they own their own property. So why does this have to do with community? Because I wanted to learn about community, so we talked about that when they came to live with us. We want to work on this definition of community. And I looked up the word community, and the best I could make out of it was that common unity equals community. The origins of the Latin have to do with common and have to do somewhat with municipality, but it's about working together towards a common goal. So what I found after, I made this into a sign and hung it on the wall so that every time when we came from the parking, we'd walk by this sign to remind us. And how do we build this? So then we said, if we're only doing projects, we're not learning about each other. If we have times when we call them nosh nights, where you bring a little something to share and you sit and talk and just talk about what's going on, do a check-in, what's your life like. Those were totally different from, here's how you clean a paintbrush, to try to build some knowledge of one another's lives over time. It gave us a sense of purpose, I think, and I know that we're passing on something. And at the age, last time I came to speak, it was on the third act. And the one thing about this third act of our lives, as we mature in our lives and get to the point where you're nearing retirement or in retirement, what can I do if my body feels like it's kind of not as strong as it has been? I can mentor those younger than me, and that my spirituality has no bounds. I can grow in my spirit by mentoring, sharing what I know, my wisdom, with someone younger than me. Let me see how I wanted to end this. We also have, this isn't all peaches and cream. There are times when things get weird and people do things and then they ask later, and you have to figure out how to address difficult topics. So we had to learn about communication. How can we best talk about things in a healthy manner? That was part of our growing as well, for both Sylvan and I, and for the two of them. I sat with this morning, and I want to read this part because it came to me in a way. So it says, and we have found that what we have in abundance, shared with what may be lacking in another, is a beautiful thing. Finding common unity lets us live into the saying that we are better together than we are apart. But I added that we are better together than separate and lacking. So I had the sign made. So just in closing, community of healing through beauty from ashes, from using our time, our talents, our thought, and treasure to create an abundance of resources, and finding that we are better together by common unity, by community. And so it is.
Yes, and of course. Julie, thank you very much. I'm thinking about a lot of things, projects and stuff like that. Anyway, thank you, Julie, very much. And Julie, when she was talking about the cabaret a couple weeks ago, she sang with her husband too, and they did duet stuff. And she's a musician and plays guitar. And we are looking forward to when Lori and Julie and Sylvan can come back. Lori, remember, plays the harp, the Celtic harp. Sylvan, he's a fiddle dude, and violinist, excuse me, sir. And so anyway, we are going to sing this song, Family of Love. and it's all about community. And I hope it can be like our theme song, like we had Imagine was the theme song for a long time. And it's page 210 in the Wings of Song. It's 210 and 211, 2 pages. When you get to the end of the second page, go back to the bottom where that second verse begins on page 210. Back to the bottom of the first page, and then sing it through again. Is that clear as mud? Okay. We can stand up, and again, Julie, thank you very much for being here today.